So really an attractive ad or a way to penetrate this in a different way is going to be critical as we move forward in social media. So let me jump right in. The first thing we want to point to is what are our social media trends. So what are the trends that really are impacting social media? Obviously, I think, and I'm going to repeat some things that you guys know, so I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. 81% of nonprofits put Facebook in the first place as their most important social media site. 11% put Twitter. Instagram is growing in importance and is actually leapfrogging Pinterest and Google. So these are just sort of the dirty facts here. The usage for content, Facebook and Twitter are used significantly more frequently. Instagram is growing in importance. YouTube also incredibly important. So the usage by nonprofits is incredibly important in distributing content and getting your message out to people. But these channel decisions are really difficult. The big gorillas in the room are the websites and email marketing, and we don't want to undercut those because most people continue to put a balance of effort into those two mediums. But social media is growing on that. The traditional social media networks are starting to catch up. They've surpassed in-person events. And as we go down the road, you see the more traditional marketing efforts have fallen by the wayside. And as far as time spent per week, we have a significant year-over-year increase in the amount of time that's dedicated to social media. So you'll start to see, even though email and websites are typically seen as driving the most transactional volume, the highest level of engagement, the updates, particularly to Facebook, are becoming more and more important to most nonprofits. So you start to see people being able to leverage their efforts in pursuit of social media. But let's talk a little bit about donors. So donors are really interesting. So great study, Money for Good. If you haven't read it, the donor study focused around high net worth donors, anyone over $80,000 a year annual income, and really focuses a lot on what those trends are. It's a multi-year study, 2010, 2012, the newest version, 2015. Really great information about donors. Some of the things it says are a little uncomfortable, but they help us to develop our strategy. Good news, in general, American donors feel very strongly about giving and giving back. They're really engaged. They volunteer. They feel a responsibility, and believe that their giving makes a really big difference. Their giving makes a difference, and it's important to them and their community. However, and we always like to add the but, donors are increasingly feeling challenged by the different questions around what their donations drive. So it's resulting in some confusion and skepticism. The biggest things people really see, they want to know how their money is being used. So how is the organization using their dollars? The second to that is the frequency of solicitations, and really how is that structuring across what their needs are and how they're wanting to engage with you. And it results in some pretty distinct profiles coming out about people and how they want to engage that really are, I'm satisfied, I'm really busy and feeling overwhelmed and confused by how I want to make a decision. I really want to make a decision, but I may not have a ton of money right now, so I need to be judicious in how I make decisions. 28% that are skeptics, and that's a big category that we want to think about as we're working through social media strategy. People who don't necessarily understand or have confidence in the nonprofit sector. And then another big category of 23% that are pretty significantly disengaged and don't necessarily engage with the nonprofit sector. So bear those in mind as you're working through your strategies. Because what ends up happening because of some of these questions that these different profiles have is they develop a higher level of loyalty to their primary causes. They conduct less research than they really think they should. And they go with the choosing to donate to a well-known nonprofit. So it's a little bit of saying there's a lot of noise going in, so they revert to comfortable, familiar habits. Another big trend that we're seeing that is important to factor in here as well is the shifting population. As the population ages, the donor community does as well. So really, nonprofits need to find new ways to engage and replenish their base. And patterns of giving and engaging are different. They're just different across the board. Their satisfaction with giving is lower than people who are older. and they research more and are more inclined to do planned giving, which is a really critical factor to think about as well. The generational shift, just from going by the numbers, we see millennials are 21% intending to switch. So really they have less loyalty to the nonprofits that they typically give to and less loyalty to big brands. They actually do a much better job on seeking advice on how to give, how much to give. So they will consult with others as opposed to people who are older who don't typically tend to do this. And then as well, one of the more obvious ones is that they just research online more. So they research more, they have less loyalty, higher flexibility, and they're using online to research. One of the key things that we want to think about. And online for them, basic rules. This is not necessarily for donors, it's in the population in total. But when we went back and said how many people, when we look at the allocation in nonprofits of how people are using their time, just remember they're using it on Facebook for a good reason. Facebook has an enormous following, and it also continues to grow. It doesn't grow as fast from a numbers percentage, but it grows. But the growth there is significant across the board. And what are they doing? Really critically, online activities, and this is across all of your demographics. You're seeing all sorts of different ways to engage with a philanthropy are happening online, from anything from from signing a petition to listening to a podcast, to looking at videos or photos, to uploading a video about what they're doing, so actively engaging, to really sort of viewing information online about a charity. But social media specifically, they're doing a number of different activities that make sure that they can engage in the research and engage with a nonprofit as they're going through their philanthropic journey. So really, they're following charities, they're sharing about charities, they're fundraising for a charity, and what you'll see is that, and they're following charities, the information that's being posted. You'll see in these that across the board, the Gen Y or the millennials are really much more engaged in both social and online, but particularly online. The trend that jumps out is that the generational shifts are not necessarily as significant into the boomers as you would be inclined to think. So boomers are engaging more online, maybe not as much as the Gen X's and the Gen Y's, but they're engaging in numbers that are pretty significant. When you think about it, you say you have a vehicle where you can engage with 27% of philanthropic supporters who are going to follow you and have access to your message. That's a big number across other vehicles, traditional as well as online vehicles. You may not see those numbers, so you can't rule these out as a way of getting to donors and to philanthropic supporters in all age ranges. Another huge trend that we're seeing, so shift from social to, or a social shift to mobile. And so I say that just a little bit of a tongue twister there. But what we're trying to say here is that really the biggest trend that you're going to see is social is mobile. There's 60% of all social media activity occurs on a smartphone. 51% of people who are visiting websites are doing so on a smartphone. And then one of the up-and-coming ways people are really engaging is crowdfunding, and 17% of donations that are crowdfunded are made on mobile devices. So again, these are ways that we want to make sure that we're penetrating and factoring into our strategy as we go along. But at the end of the day, and this is something that we all know as as a nonprofit, is people give to those that they know and those that they are affiliated with. And so we can't understate that as we're going through our social and mobile strategies and our online strategies. Ultimately, at the end of the day, people are most comfortable with an organization that they have knowledge about, and they're also incredibly comfortable with being involved with an organization that actually has a connection to them. So they have an affiliation via friends or other acquaintances. Great study that Google did this year, and this really, again, just sort of amplifies what we're talking about. 46% of donors are researching on social network sites. So I sort of laughingly say, you know, only 46%, well, 54% are, you know, going to the website. 46% are going to social networking sites. And these are the traditional social networking sites, and that's a huge number. When we look at some of the things that are more traditional sources, their numbers are significantly less. So we want to make sure, again, that we're factoring this in. 66% find social networking sites useful. Again, this is another big number to consider. This isn't something where people go there, they try to engage, they're getting turned off, they're going away. This is something that 2/3 of people really see this as a valuable tool in their research process as they're going towards donation. Really key findings on this, though. 57% make a donation after watching an online video. That's one of the really important things that we want to think about is how does that play into your strategy. Number two, really 81% think impact is the most important factor. So how can you show in what you're doing in online and in social the impact that you're having on a regular and routine basis? Mobile, again, being one of the key things. 1 in 4 are actually doing research on mobile, which is a number that's gone up tremendously. And they're doing it for organizations that they weren't previously aware of. So it isn't an issue of saying, I just need to connect with them on mobile. You need to be in a place where they can discover you. Reviews are increasingly important, and particularly important on mobile, which is some of the key trends with there. And then 25% are completing donations on mobile devices. So again, something not to forget. Social media. Social media exerts, then, over and above everything else, a strong influence over giving decisions within peer networks. One of the things that we really want to focus on, because there's a lot of challenges with getting to donors in direct solicitations online or via any channel, but there's a huge network effect that occurs, and the research shows that 70% would take action after seeing a friend's post about giving. That's a huge number when we think about it, 70%. If we had that sort of effect with all of our other marketing efforts, we'd be home great. More than 1 in 4 would donate to a charity if asked by name, and 1 in 5 would make a donation after seeing a friend's post. So these are some of the network effects that we want to factor in as we're building out our social media strategy, because likes are nice, but there's a couple of things that are going against us. I love this UNICEF campaign. Like it's on Facebook, and we'll vaccinate 0 children against polio. It was one of my more favorite campaigns, because what it really stressed was we need to make a connection between our social media and what we're trying to accomplish, so donations and mission. And then again, we're seeing that disconnect here, saying the most important metric that nonprofit content marketers use that are primarily using social media is really, it's a very diffuse number and doesn't necessarily align to increased fundraising. We also see a disconnect of purpose in our organization. So when we walk through how the different players in our organization see social media playing into the efforts that we're working towards, communication professionals tend to lean really hard towards community engagement and branding. So really, they're trying to build up what that community is and get people involved and get the brand message out. Obviously, development directors have a different stake in that and are really more interested and more oriented towards fundraising. Executive directors then fall in the middle on that. They have interest in both sides, but they need to be able to make those decisions about which vehicles need to be utilized most effectively as we go down the road towards donation. And here's another stat that is going to sound odd here. So we know we have more online giving, and in all of our marketing efforts, we typically say online is the best way that we can attribute our marketing efforts to our marketing results to actual efforts. So we say online is the most trackable thing that we have, except, and this is according to Blackbaud, what we're seeing is half or more of online income is unattributable. What that means, so we can say, yep, they came to my website and they donated, which is great. So they, online giving. But what we can't see is where that started from. There is a disconnect. We don't know. Did they see your message on a social network, or are they responding to a direct mail piece that you sent out? Have they seen an advertisement that you have someplace? Have they been talking to a friend of yours about this? Did they have connection with an event that you did? Those things become very intermediated from in the online perspective. So we can't necessarily say everyone who came to online came there through an email campaign, because we look at the numbers and say, the disconnect between the number of people that say that they're coming from an email campaign and what our actual metrics are showing, they don't line up. So we have to understand that in the old days, in the good old days, back when we did some direct mail campaigns and we did all of the different traditional solicitations that we did, we could really attribute almost all of the donations to where they came from. It was white noise was what we called it, those couple percentage points that didn't necessarily align to a specific marketing effort that we had done. Now it's up to 50%. So these are the things that factor how we make decisions. And then really probably the bigger one that we need to think about now is what do people consider acceptable solicitation channels? So what are the ways that we can reach out to people that are acceptable to them? We know things, friend fundraising. Pretty much everyone is pretty happy if a friend's child comes and solicits them. Again, friends doing that as well. A letter or a message from an organization that you know, or an email, listening on radio and TV, all of these are considered to be pretty acceptable forms of solicitation. A message via social media, so that direct solicitation is not necessarily considered to be acceptable. So you tend to have people be less focused on be less accepting of either a direct message or of a direct solicitation online. So what do we do with that? Because, as you were saying, donations are better. So recommendation number 1. This is, stick with me through the science on this one, because it's going to sound a little odd. What you need to do essentially is look at how you harness your supporters to build support in their network. So of those people who you have in your network, we know that recommendations for nonprofits come from friends oftentimes. How do you leverage your network to be able to speak to their network? How do you encourage them? You need to encourage them to spread the news of their good work. They need to be clear that you want them to talk about what they're doing so that they can then pull other people into that. You want to avoid those direct solicitations in favor of really amplifying your supporters' voices, and you really want to identify who your key influencers are and build an influencer strategy around those. So you want to know not just who's in your network, but who's sharing what you want them to share, who of their networks are sharing what you want them to share, and then who are driving donations from those. And just to walk through, and I apologize for the really pretty drawing here, but the science of this is based on some great research that's been done over the past 10 years from someone who is, at full disclosure, on our board of advisors and who is a great social scientist, James Fowler. The studies that Dr. Fowler has done show is this concept of irrational generosity can be amplified, not just in the first level, but the second level and the third level. And to explain, they ran a scientific experiment that was to show cause and effect of if somebody, so level 1, Lucas, plays a game with 4 other people in his network. And in that game, they're asked to contribute a certain amount of money. And there's no rules around that. They contribute more or less, but the money gets divided up at the end. So who's irrationally generous in that pool? So contributing over what you think that the minimum is going to be, or over what you think the average is going to be irrationally generous. So when Lucas does and does an irrationally generous act and contributes more, then what happens is other people in the game will take that message to their next game that they play, and they'll be irrationally generous. And then the people who they play with take that, and then they actually create more generosity from there. So the effect of the network on amplifying, the original work was done around happiness, and it spread to generosity. So the key is that if you can get your supporters to be more generous, and all they have to do is talk about it. They don't have to ask others. You don't have to tell others. They just have to say, I like this organization and I'm generous with my time, energy, and effort. It's a great way to get people involved without directly soliciting them. And it leverages the things that they want to leverage. Because there's this great concept that I'm sure everyone's pretty familiar with of the idea of social proof. It's become more and more predominant, and it's always been around. So it's always been there, of the concept that you're going to conform to the actions of others under the assumption that those actions are reflective of the correct behavior. But really interestingly, in an online environment, how does that work? Dr. Fowler's research shows that it does work in an online environment, but the things that are really critical for us, we see the wisdom of friends as social proof, the wisdom of crowds as social proof, and then user social proof, which really revolves around reviews reviews and ratings. So being able to look not institutional ratings, but actual ratings from users in the system. So it's a big way that we can look at building out this structure that uses social media for what its best uses, but doesn't necessarily get into that category of what people think is an unacceptable solicitation. So the way we do that is we really want to provide opportunities for our supporters to share the news of their good work really at every pass. A lot of people have widgets, and I won't name any names, but that just let you say, hey, share this, or put this out. And they're a little clunky. They're not necessarily, they don't necessarily carry your brand with them. They don't necessarily have that visual effect that people tend to find most impactful on social networks. So you want to be able to create an experience that does that has an attractive interface, that carries your brand message, but that's available for your users to be able to share at those points where they're interacting with you. So making sure your thank you page, this is a great study that was done on 32 different nonprofits landing pages, and it was a really interesting take on really how few are leveraging this concept of network in order to spread the news of their good work. So it's the first thing that you can really do is make sure that you're building that into your strategies. Number two, really it's around multi-generational strategies. Most of the data shows, we know that Gen X and Gen Y are up and coming. But at the end of the day, we know also that the odds are strong that your next donor is going to be a boomer. So you want to make sure that your strategies that you're employing are multi-generational, that they're really not just focused either solely on social media or not focused solely on direct mail, but really involve these multi-generational strategies that speak to all of the different ways that people are consuming media. Multi-generational, again, in this effect, it really means integrated campaigns. So what you see in here is that, generally speaking, I love the statement, the generalization that definitely deserves to be laid to rest is the notion that digital is for young people and offline is for old people. You see across the board on every single category, with the exception of the matures, which are really the above the boomers, you see across the board that they're both interfacing online and offline, and that generally speaking, you're going to get your better effect by being able to touch them in all of the different places. The social network sites have a great following in total, particularly in Gen X and Gen Y. They fall off in the older ages, but that doesn't mean that they don't have the effect, and this is where the network effect comes in again, is that even though you're touching the Gen X's and the Gen Y's, you are also touching the people that they touch if you implement the appropriate ways to touch them. So you still get to be able to impact your boomers without actually forcing them into an interaction that they may not necessarily be more predisposed towards. But on the flip side, you also see that that information in the mail, that is still popular across the board, that even Gen X and Gen Y are actually opening and responding to the information that they're receiving via direct mail. So you can't necessarily walk away from any of them. Face-to-face events always retain their popularity across the board. What you're doing really has to be an integrated effort. Additionally, it also has to be integrated from a call to action perspective. So we know that volunteers are, and I had the statistic this morning in my head and now it's gone, but there's it's something like twice as more likely to donate than people who aren't volunteers. You're going to continually get a bigger bump with donations, getting people to volunteer, getting people to your events, getting people to your offline experiences, even just getting people to your website. The more engagement you have with those, the higher the propensity to convert. And social media, being the great tool it is for brand and engagement, is a great tool to drive those interactions. And again, we keep going back to that statistic about 50% of what we're seeing is not necessarily attributable. You need to be able to invest in those different formats so that you can continue to leverage the amplifying effect. Recommendation number 4, peer-to-peer is growing in importance. And I put this in there simply because it's such an amazing way to be able to use that network effect, and it's such an important growth right now in the industry. So we see a lot more people engaging in these activities, and we see it across all of the different generations. So even through the matures, you're still seeing people who are fundraising on behalf of an organization or participating in the Run Walk event. They're critical pieces of your puzzle, and they're very highly influenced through social media and the network effect that we're highlighting. And then last really is recommendation number 5 is crowdfunding is as well. Crowdfunding being very similar in its nature to some of the peer-to-peer is that you're really looking at amplifying networks to be able to drive donations through crowdfunding. You're seeing you see an intense drop-off obviously to get towards the matures, but when we're seeing 13% of boomers saying that they're likely to give, that's a big number. We can't ignore it. I know we say it's only 13%, but actually it's 13%. That's a good number. And given the fact that 6% of them actually have, again, we start to see that we can't ignore any of these different social vehicles that are leveraging the network effect. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Debbie to talk to you a little bit about a tool that we have that helps to build this network effect, that helps to leverage your networks to be able to drive your messages.
Thank you, Inga. That was great information. And it's interesting this morning, hot off the press from Nonprofit Tech for Good, they came out with a survey that really mirrored all of these things that we're saying. So 27% of donors cite social media as the primary communication tool that inspires them to give. And for millennials, it's 43%. So, and this was across 3,000 nonprofits across the world. So absolutely right on everything we're saying. And at the end of this session, you will get a recording as well as a worksheet to help you operationalize some of these things. And I'm going to include that infographic that I got this morning. But without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about Given. Given is a great tool that can be part of your social media campaign that will leverage all of these best practices that Inga talked about. And it only takes a couple of minutes to get going. We're going to ask you to sign up. And so once you sign up, we ask you a couple of different information, a couple of different pieces of information, but it's very simple to get going. And then we're going to ask you to brand it. One of the things that Inga talked about several times is the disconnect between the message and disconnect that happens in social media. You know, several of you on the line know that I came from Blackbaud. And the biggest complaint that we got in the crowdfunding system within Blackbaud was the loss of branding, the loss of the nonprofit voice. And Given amplifies that. The first thing you're going to do when you sign up is you're going to name your campaign, and you're going to upload an image and your logo. So that image can be anything. It can be, you know, this is my son playing football, by the way. It can be, you know, an event. It can be a peer-to-peer campaign. It can be a general donation, whatever picture resonates and that you want out there in the media. And then number 2, we're going to ask you to create an impact statement. So more and more funders are asking, you know, what is my $20 going to do? What is my $2,000 going to do? So we give you that opportunity to put that in there, and you can enter into up to 10 amounts. Now, I hear from a lot of medical organizations that say, hey, Deb, you know, I need $5,000 to make a real impact, but I need all those small gifts that add up. So this step is optional. So you can skip it and just create your visually pleasing postcard. And that's pretty much it. You have created your postcard. So 2 simple steps and you're done. Then we're going to give you 3 different ways to share it. First of all, there's a URL. You can copy and paste that URL and send it out in a thank you page, send it out in an email, variety of ways that you can share that URL. You can also cut and paste that script onto your thank you page that creates, as Inga recommended, that branded, beautifully, visually pleasing postcard at the thank you page. Right at the moment of giving is the best time to amplify their voice. So we're going to provide you that information. And then the third way is, Inga mentioned that share this button. Well, we have a share this button too, but it's really share the good. And it's branded to your organization. So when somebody clicks on that URL on the pop-up or on the button, this is just an example of how you can integrate that URL into your automated thank you note. Now, all of you use probably everything from PayPal to Blackbaud to Greater Giving, every different payment system under the book. But generally, you will have access to edit this copy. So if you're not an HTML or don't understand JavaScript, you could just embed that URL, or you could put in that script. Again, only take you a second, you get that shared out. Then when they click on that, oh, there's the embedded JavaScript where it will pop up that postcard. Now, when they click on that, it brings the donor to the postcard that you created in Give It. So you see it's got the football. It says, I gave $50. That was 1 ticket to the game. The URL directs to the website where my friends can buy tickets. So I'm saying, I'm going to the game, click here and buy your ticket. I can share it with Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn with 1 click of a button. Because we know that the easier it is to share, the more sharing that will happen. So Given also auto-generate those images and those pictures and that postcard to fit within the social media parameters that Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn represent. So it's very simple. With 1 click, they have shared out into their social networks. Now, when they click that button, it takes them to the donation page or whatever page you want them to go to. It can go to Eventix, it can go to Petition, it can go to an Action, it can go to a peer-to-peer, it can go anywhere you want. I always tell our customers that you are only limited by your own creativity. So one of the questions I always get at this point is, well, that's great, Deb, but how does it share out? Well, when the donor clicks your postcard, we use industry standard authorization tools to ask them to create an account using their Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. And most of our donors are good with that because they want to support and they want to amplify your voice. So they're going to log in, they're going to create an account, and the beauty for the donor is it's always free for them, and it gives them the ability to really track their contributions, track their profile across all of their networks. You know, we talk about social proof, and more statistics are showing us that donors don't want to just be noticed for the dollars that they give. They want to be noticed for everything that they do. They want you to hear their voice. I was talking to an organization just yesterday, and they said that they love Given because it allows them to put in the hours that they donate. They've got a lot of teens and a lot of millennials, and they can't give big dollars, but they're tracking their volunteer hours, and they really love it. They love to see that difference that they're making and that their friends are coming out to help as well. So they created kind of a little competition between those teams. So, hey, you're bringing 3 friends and have got this many sparks on Given. Let's see what you can do. So it really creates this real profile of giving, really tracks their influence. You know, we talk a lot about time, talent, and treasures. Well, now we've added the voice, and that is so impactful for the donors. One of the things that I want to bring up as well, and this is a little hint that was shared with me by a customer, is when you create the social profile for your organization, this is a great way to link your Facebook, your Twitter, and your LinkedIn account to your social profile for your organization. So just as we encourage our peer-to-peer and our DIY fundraisers, be your first donation, be your first share. Once you create your postcard and you've created your Given account, do that second step and create your social profile, and then link it to your Facebook, your Twitter, your LinkedIn account, and do that first share. You'll be amazed at how quickly it can amplify. We also allow you to create multiple campaigns for your donors to choose from. You can create up to 5 campaigns, and each campaign will have a separate redirect and a separate impact statement. So you can have something for, you know, your children's charity or your children's home, as well as for your elders feeding program, whatever works. And as Inga was pointing out, different strategies will work with different audiences and different segments. So you can create different campaigns to redirect to those people. One of the things that you're going to receive probably tomorrow is a worksheet that's going to teach you how to segment for those generational in a lead into our webinar next month that's going to be setting a social media calendar. So those 5 campaigns can help you segment between your audiences. I also want to point out, we talked about the share this. So this is how that website button would look on your website. Spread the good, when they click on that button, it takes them to that postcard. That postcard shares just like that, easy peasy, and your voice, your message is out there. We also understand, as Inga pointed out, 65% of giving and interaction is done mobile. So Given goes everywhere with you. We've got an app on iPhone as well as on Android, and we're constantly updating it and constantly figuring out new ways to outreach to our donors. So I promise to be done by 10:45, so I'm going to go through these next ones pretty quickly. You know, I have, like Inga, I've got 18 years experience in this business, and as I was looking through our attendee list, I'm just amazed. Stupid Cancer to the animal rights groups to the San Diego Humane Society, all of the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things you guys are doing in your community, and we applaud you and honor you for that. That's why your success is my mission. Provided free of charge, we do these monthly how-tos. You'll get tip sheets every week once you sign up and you've got an active campaign going. We'll send coaching emails to your donors, encouraging them to continue sharing, continue sparking, as we call it. When you call us, first of all, we're not going to charge you for calling us, unlike some other guys, but you will get a real person on the line. And we also, because Given's a new product, I mean, Pacific is a new company, but we are founded out of a vision born from the industry. We know that you need more information. We know you need information about your donors. We know you need information about their network. So we want to hear from you on how we can improve our products, and we give you regular opportunity to provide that. So to wrap up, you can create a postcard not just for a general giving campaign. You can do one for your peer-to-peer. This is actually my card that I did for my 3-day walk. Sorry, Komen people on the phone, but I raised $300 by posting this on my Facebook page. So the redirect URL went exactly to my participant center. Great way to amplify your peer-to-peer supporters. Pet of the week. I mean, look at this little guy. I think his name is Hazel. Highlight that pet of the week in different postcards and share them out there. The causes, Amnesty International, you can segment into 5 different causes. Send them out to your 5 different voice sets and get people to go right to the page to sign your petition. The bottom line is you're only limited by your own creativity. Whatever you want to do, however you want to use it, and we are here to help you. So without any further ado, I honestly believe that I have lost my chat function. So I'm going to open it up to some questions. But if we don't get to you, then here's my contact information. That is my direct line that you can get to me. If you have questions for Inga, we'll certainly forward them on. Here is one question, is what is the cost? Well, first of all, if you missed it, Given is free for the first 90 days. After that, we have a tiered scale starting from $9.95 a month all the way up to about $300 a month, depending on the needs of your organization. But I just encourage everybody, remember it's free for the first 90 days and will take you 10 minutes to sign up. So I encourage you to use it and see what happens and share it out. So what is the best way to get donors to interact? Well, you've got to get the postcard out to them. And that can be either through that sending the URL through the thank you note. In one of the best practices that you will get after you sign up, there's like a 3-step process that several of our very successful customers just posted on their Facebook page. Said, click this link, share it, done. So it's very simple, and that just means getting it out in your social media, getting the word out. I mean, like Inga said, it's all about asking. If you ask for that support, donors are more than willing to do if you ask. So in closing, we ask you to sign up for Given. Use this as part of your social media strategy, and join us next month when we talk about creating an integrated marketing campaign for 2016. And thank you all so much for joining us.